Finance. Who can get excited about finance? I've got 3 little check marks there. It could be 10, it could be 15, right? But there are a couple of major categories of finance. The one everybody knows about, the one you're probably thinking of, is a mortgage broker or a banker. All right, so let's just say a banker, right? I have several friends that are bankers. I love them dearly, right? They're great. I know a couple presidents of the banks here locally. They're great guys. And at this time, there aren't any women bankers that I know, so I'm just going to say great guys. Okay, they're wonderful people. They're trying to make a profit. They're doing all their things. They're trying to have the best customer service they can have, etc., etc. But their wrists are locked. There are things that they can and can't do, right? Especially when they want to try to sell it to the secondary market, yada, yada, yada. Because that's where they're getting the money and that's where they can flip things and do things. There are very few banks that want to hold notes there, right? Or just for very special circumstances. For the most part, the bulk of banks' business, they're selling off to the secondary markets. In order for them to sell it to the secondary markets, they've got to make sure that every single little box is ticked, right? They got to check every single box. That requires a gazillion pieces of paper, gobs of paper. It's not because they don't like you, it's not because they don't want you. They just have to do that, right? So if you go with a banker, you're going to have great credit. You're going to have a lot of money to put down or equity tied up somewhere else. The first property I bought, I took out a line of credit against my home, and I used that money as the down payment on the investment property. You can do that, all kinds of different things. I've used bankers in the past. I've had great success, great luck, things you got to think about. We talked about that somewhere over in here. I can't remember which part we talked about that in. With a banker, single family home, the interest rate is going to be higher than. Single family home, if today's interest rate is 4, an investment property is going to be at least a point, maybe 2 points higher. And it depends on what your credit score is and what your risk is, right? Risk and return. Down payment on a single family home, all the way down to 0 or 3.5% or 10. With an investment property, they're going to want 20, maybe even 30% down or more. It just depends again how all that works and all the boxes that they have to check. Okay, so banker is one, and maybe your very first property you can do as a banker one. You hear about all of these different plans that people talk about where they talk about no money down. No money down. Did you ever hear that saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it is? That's not true here. This exists. And that's the part that I get really excited about. Okay, it's not going to work every time. It just isn't. But this is another thing we can look at here is seller financing. Okay, seller financing. You could do a lease option where you're renting it, and then you put an option payment in there that if you fulfill the terms of the lease and the option and the money you put down goes toward the principal price, and some of your lease payment may also go down for that. That's like a rent to own, you might hear. That's interesting. While I am not an attorney, I'm not going to give you the specifics of it. One thing to keep in mind as an investor, it's a rental agreement, and then oftentimes the option agreement is on top of that. So with the rental agreement, if it says in there if they're 5 days late, you can start to evict them. And then if your option paperwork has language in there that says that the rental agreement supersedes the option agreement, then potentially, it depends. Talk to your attorney, the really smart guy over here, but potentially you could get out of that a little bit more easily than a contract for deed, which locks it up. And contract for deed is much more stringent, much more like a mortgage. And so that gives a ton of rights to the renter themselves or the buyer that's different. So they're different. So you really need to pay attention to which one is which. You're looking right now at potentially buying one. There's also something called a sandwich lease. A sandwich lease. What's a sandwich lease? Well, it's a sandwich. Okay, think about it. Here's a piece of bread. Here's another thing, the meat, noodle, whatever. And here's another piece of bread, right? That's a sandwich. And so if you have a house that someone is trying to sell, I can step in, you can step in, I can show you how to do this. You can say, hey, dear seller, you're having a hard time selling this, or you're not getting it rented, or whatever. I'd be willing to come in there and I will rent it from you at your asking price, $1,000 a month. And I'm going to need 2 months in order to go find a tenant. I'll guarantee the rent to you as long as I can find a tenant, 2 months or whatever. You can word this however you want. Then you go out and you find a renter who pays $1,200 a month. Okay, how can you do that? You can. Trust me, you can. Okay? We can't get into all of the details just in this short little bit. I'd be happy to go into that deeper maybe in a future video with sandwich leases and how they look and what you can do. But look, now then, you're producing income. It's not going to be depreciable because you're not buying it. You're just renting it at this price, and then you're renting it to someone else for there, and you get to keep the difference. That's pretty cool, right? That's no money down. That's seller financing. There are other things that are really cool because sometimes, well, there are a lot of things that happen to us in life. Some of those things have happened to me. Some things have happened to you, I'm sure. But what are the big motivators? Death, divorce, loss of job, etc., etc., etc. If you can be creative, you can find a way to do the seller financing, even when you're getting started. If you can use the banker, that's probably smoothest, cleanest way to do it. You don't really have to think about it too much. You just got to give them the paperwork that they need and agree to their terms, and it's probably going to work out wonderfully for you, right? But if you aren't able to do that, or if you come across a very motivated individual, then you can structure something here. And again, you can structure it in a way that it's a win-win, right? It never needs to be a win-lose, ever. That's not worth it. Come with a solution that gets that person out of their problem and helps you solve yours, which is like appreciation or income producing, and you'll be great. So I really, really get excited about financing, and I've got deals going on in my head right now that I would love to share with you. Maybe one of these times I'll do a video where I show you exactly how to lock it in based on what you put into it, the depreciation, how you segregate it. We talked a little bit about the depreciation and the segregation and how all of that money comes back to you so that you can actually finance that and make it work. So anyway, I love the finance side of things. I haven't gone real deep in it. I hope that I have whet your appetite so that you want more. And if you do, just message me. My contact information is everywhere. My name is right here. You can easily get a hold of me, find me on the internet. I don't think there's but one of us in the whole country. So it should be easy to find. And all roads lead back here if you look for Farlow Real Estate Experts. Jeremy Farlow. Love to help you think through, talk through, and work out some of these things. Real estate investing is exciting, right? It is so exciting. I love it. I hope you can see my excitement and my passion. I'd love to help you be a part of it. There's so many different ways to get involved. The last little bit's coming up. That's it. And then you need to pull the trigger. If you haven't already pulled the trigger, if you haven't called me to get something going, shame on you. If you haven't called your realtor where you are to get something going, double shame on you, right? You need to pull the trigger. Quit waiting around. It's really an awesome opportunity. There are so many tax savings here. The government wants you to be providing nice homes for people, and they've given us all of the reason in the world to do it. So the next little bit is coming up, and I think this will kind of pull it all together, and hopefully then you'll be ready to pull the trigger and get going with your first or your very first investment property, or add to the portfolio that you've been creating as you've been watching these. Stay tuned.